Hi, I'm Christian von Koenigsegg. I'm here at Cars and Culture with Jason Stein.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the program. Welcome into Cars and Culture, Christian. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great, and great pleasure to be on the show, and nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. Your mind is always going in different directions, and I know you always have new focus. Where is your mind today on the company and on what you'd like to accomplish in the near term?
So we're going through an expansion phase where we're growing quite a lot and have been doing so for the last couple of years. So it's apart from kind of figuring out the next projects, where the industry is going, is kind of also learning to become a little bit of a bigger company and holding the ship together and making sure everyone runs in the right direction, which is very exciting. And I think just generally speaking, it's good momentum and a great interest out there, and we have a lot of exciting stuff in the pipeline. So
a lot of exciting stuff with a lot of excited people. Let's focus on what you said just a moment ago, which is becoming a bigger company. What are the things that you've had to learn in that journey?
Well, it's basically learning by doing, I would say, and I think it's really important to kind of make sure everyone understands the company culture, where we came from, how we started out, and where we're going. And to me, it's very important to maintain this kind of can do, nothing is impossible, highly spirited culture, and that is a great focus of mine, to make sure, even though we have become quite a lot bigger, that stays the same.
And how do you do that?
Well, yeah, that's a good question, but it's being very present at the factory. Most of the operations are still in one location, which makes it easy. So I spend a lot of time personally attending many of the meetings and hanging out with people and sharing past anecdotes and future visions, but of course not stifling the company in that everyone has to take responsibility of their different departments and divisions and their tasks, but still kind of spreading the spirit in a clear way. So it's still very, very much on a personal basis, and of course, if you can instill the new management and the bigger management with this way of working, they can then proceed with a similar approach within the different departments and divisions, and I think that's working quite well. So
does the company get to a point in size where you start to put in structures that you didn't anticipate? I suppose when you start, it's just you, and it's everything that you want to do. But as it grows, you have to adapt and change, and leadership styles change. And I'm guessing that a lot of that is truly learning on the go.
Absolutely. So I would put it like this: of course, you need a lot of more structure when you're more people, because one hand doesn't necessarily automatically know what the other hand is doing. When you're a small team, you kind of sit together, and everyone hears everything about everything and knows pretty much everything, so they can act on that total knowledge. Here it's someone tells something to someone, and then it continues that way, and the message might get distorted on the way. So routines and processes are, of course, much more important when you're bigger than when you're smaller.
I've heard you say, I've read that perhaps the company is a little unsweetish to do the things that you do. What did you mean by that?
Well, I would say, yes, there aren't a lot of luxury brands from Sweden, or extreme kind of high end. Maybe luxury is not the right word, but high end brands of this nature. So that is unswedish, and I would say that, generally speaking, the Swedish mentality is quite that you shouldn't stick out too much from the norm, and
which is a little opposite of what you do.
Exactly. So, but I think my thoughts around that are really, this was my childhood dream, and of course there are a lot of car passionate people in Sweden, like there are in every country. And I don't think it's a Swedish thing I'm doing. It's I'm just fulfilling my childhood dream, and I would have done it wherever I would have lived. So but I do think Sweden is a good breeding ground and a good place for growing. this type of business, because we have a lot of high tech. We have aerospace industry, we have, of course, car industry, we have a trucking industry, we have a lot of software companies and electronic development companies, especially considering how small Sweden is in size. And we have a lot of creative people within design and music, and there's a lot of stuff going on in little Sweden. So, and I think we have a sense for quality and being kind of what we say is what we do kind of mentality, which is very important, I think. So it's, even though it's a fairly un-Swedish product, I think Sweden is a good place to do something like this. So given what I just said.
Yeah. Let's go back to what you just said. You were a 5-year-old boy and you watched a film, a stop motion film called Pinchlift Grand Prix. And it's about a Norwegian bicycle repairman named Roder, who builds a supercar for Le Mans and wins the race. The superbug is caught at that point. Supercar bug is caught for you. You can still remember that, I'm guessing, as the impetus for where you are today.
Very vividly. So I got the question when I started the company back in 1994. So why did you do this, and so on? And I kept on answering just simply, yeah, well, I'm very car interested, and this is what I wanted to do. And then it always immediately came back with a comment as, yeah, but there are a lot of car interested people that does not start car companies. So I had to think a little bit deeper. And my absolute first memory of wanting to build a car was seeing that movie when I was 6-7 years old. And I read somewhere that if you have an impression that really affects you under the age of 11 or 12, it really shapes your personality and what you become as a grown-up person, and just stays with you because you're like an open book at that point. So I think I was kind of pre-programmed that, yeah, I had to do it somehow after seeing that movie. Before seeing it, I don't think I had a huge interest in cars, but after it, that I was so impressed by the story and the emotions and the somewhat underdog mentality of this, and coming from nowhere like a bicycle repairman and beating the establishment. It just resonated with me very deeply. So
it was a race against all odds for the individual in the film, and you've described your own journey as a race against all odds.
Yeah, absolutely. So
why has it been a race against all odds for you?
Well, I mean, there are really in modern days now, the last like 5 or 10 years, maybe you can say there are some successful startups within the car industry with this whole electrification scenario that came about that enabled a change perhaps. But before that, there were really no successful startups in modern times in the car industry. The car industry was kind of rigged only for big companies to operate. The whole certification, homologation, supply chain were totally directed towards a couple of huge companies that had been around for 100 years. And these companies didn't really want to allow any startups to enter, or so it was like absolutely impossible for a young kid from Sweden with no background in automotive, with no real financial resources to succeed and go up against super established old brands. Well, some of the strongest brands in the world, regardless of industry. That is really against all odds. And I realized when I started that was the scenario, and it was pretty much impossible. But at the same time, I wanted to prove to myself that you can do anything if you really put your mind, effort to it. If you're willing to kind of sacrifice everything, anything is possible. And that's what I believed in. And I thought this, apart from being super interested in cars, it was the perfect opportunity to try to live my dream and prove to myself and everyone else that you can actually pretty much do anything if you really put your mind to it.
And in fact, your plan was to build cars that were the opposite of what people usually think a smart business idea is.
Well, yeah,
that's what you said.
Exactly. So I would put it like this.
Nobody was asking for it.
No. It was the opposite of a business idea. Normally, when you want to set up a business, you check if is there demand for this product that is not fulfilled. And I mean, you could perhaps say that, but when I started, basically the headlines in the car magazines were the supercar is dead, no one needs it anymore, and you had Lamborghini almost going bankrupt, Bugatti did go bankrupt, even Ferrari was kind of struggling at the time, and Porsche had a tough time. So it wasn't that there was a demand that was visible, at least, and not for from a startup. So that was a really a no-go. And then do I know what I'm doing? Do I have previous experience? Do I have enough financing? It was like no. But still I wanted to do it, so it was really the opposite of a business idea. But it turned out that 6-7 years later, when we had a car to sell, the world had changed. There was a different financial situation in the world, and there was still an interest for extreme sports cars, and we were really part of that wave of extreme cars coming into play. We kind of instigated it to a certain degree, I think, and it proved possible in the end.
So is that good timing or a great idea or both?
I wouldn't call it good timing. It was like, when I hear people say, if someone is lucky or something in business, it's usually that if you have perseverance and you stick in it for a long period of time, you can catch the opportunities that come by rarely. And I mean, when I started in 1994, it took until 2002 until I could deliver a homologated, tested, functioning product. And so basically I had staying power, so I could grab the opportunities that came along. So I wouldn't necessarily call it good timing. It's just staying power more than good timing, maybe.
Okay, yeah, that's fair enough. And to get ideas for that first car, some people might not know, you went and tore pages out of old car magazines and studied technical manuscripts, searching for ways to build your dream car on a tight budget. And you said it was a lot of bread and water for years.
Absolutely. So I started planning to build my own car since I was 6 years old. So with my kind of pocket money or that I got from my parents, I bought car magazines for most of it, and I had piles of these magazines, and I kind of read them very carefully in detail to understand why cars were different, what differentiated them, and what was the underlying philosophy behind these different types of cars, to try to absorb that, so I would have this kind of database when I started of what I want to do or not. And of course, when I actually started the company in 1994, I continued that process, but it was very much like, yes, no, I like this, I don't like that, why did they do it this way? And all of them did it this way, but I think we can be in a completely different way, and so on. So I kind of used that methodology that I started as a young kid to figure out what I wanted my own car to be. And in a nutshell, I understood that it can't just be something similar to what's out there, because then the customers will buy what's out there with the brands they already know and trust. So it has to be somehow more interesting / better performance / somehow more appealing or higher degree of safety or whatever. It's more functionality, perhaps, like this detachable stowable hardtop and the doors we came up with. And I could also see that from a kind of chassis perspective, all the road going supercars at the time, this was before hypercars, of course, they had pretty simplistic chassis and suspension solutions. They had double wishbones and so on, but they were not very, very extreme if you compared it to a Formula car or something like that. So I felt, let's go more of this Formula car approach with very long, lightweight wishbones, less track width deviation, more control over the wheels, bigger bearings, just getting these fundamentals to a higher level and at a lower weight, in combination then with more power, better aerodynamics, better ergonomics, whatever we could do to stand out. And I think in the end we managed to do that. So
for sure you have. One more piece of history that most people wouldn't know: if you want to start a car company, you're going to need money, and you had a few ideas patent wise, but you also started a trading company selling all manner of things, including frozen chickens from the United States that went to Estonia. Is that correct?
That is absolutely true. So when I was 19 years old, I started my first company. So I started Koenigsegg when I was 22. And I started my first company when I was 19 because, well, I had the ambition to build cars, but I had absolutely zero resources. So I said, I need to make some money. And I had some ideas for, well, some patents. And one was this kind of click wooden floor. And I came up with that idea because my father-in-law, well, turned out to be my father-in-law, my girlfriend's father at the time, he was in the wooden floor industry, and I was in love, and I want to impress him. And then I came up with this idea how you can click wooden planks together. He wasn't very interested. He thought I didn't know what I was talking about. But I showed it around a little bit in Sweden and in Belgium, where I lived at the time. And in the end, some Swedish and Belgian flooring manufacturers started manufacturing floors like that 3-4 years later. I didn't take any patents, so yeah, that was that. But at least I can take credit for the idea, and it became a really big thing. I mean, almost all kind of wooden floors in the world are put together this way now. So that was a pretty big idea, it turned out. But yeah, so it didn't give me any money, but I had a kind of very advanced business idea of buying something for X and selling it for Y, which would be a little bit more than X then. And it turned out that in Estonia, they needed, this was after the Iron Curtain had fallen a few years earlier, and they needed plastic bags, pens, chicken apparently, and other things. And so I kind of checked out the local need and found a few local contacts there that kind of helped out from that side. And started looking around what I could find. So I found plastic bags in Sweden with a print upside down that I could get almost for free. And they didn't care. They were just happy to get plastic bags. So I could make a little bit of money on that. Same thing with kind of ballpoint pens with like wrong prints on it and stuff like that. Commercial pens that I could buy for almost nothing. And they were happy to get ballpoint pens. And then, yeah, frozen chicken. So I think for a couple of months, we were the largest chicken importer in Estonia. And we ended up with a small office in Stockholm. We were 3 people working in the company, and 3 years later I said to myself, okay, I've proven to myself I can make money, I can create a business, I have that in me, but I'm not very interested in frozen chicken or plastic pens. It is cars I want to build. Now I have a little bit of money, and if I don't start now, I probably will never do it. I didn't have any kids. I wasn't married, and I felt it will probably take a long time, and it will probably be very difficult and hard. So if I don't do it now, I probably will never do it. And yeah, and that was in 1994. Never looked back. Still have the original company from when I was 19. It's the holding company in the group. So. Yeah, that was that.
And then less than a decade later, you produced that first vehicle. Several prototypes were made, but the first car was sold in 2002. And
yeah. So the first prototype we managed to do in 2 years. And I was very, very disappointed because according to my plan, I should be able to build the first running car in 1 year from inception, I thought. Instead, it took twice the amount of time and 3-4 times as much money as I had hoped, but we got it together. And in hindsight, I have no idea how we could build that kind of extreme car in that short period of time that worked that well, because it was a ground up chassis. The engine and gearbox were standard, they were from Audi, but bodywork, carbon fiber, semi-carbon fiber chassis, a lot of unique features and functions. And if you look at it today, it's still kind of, you can recognize the modern Koenigsegg in that first prototype. It was very, very rough, but yeah, it's still running. So
and the CC8S model was then deemed the most powerful production car by the Guinness Book of World Records. And in fact, that same year, the car also made not only the record, but well, it made a different set of record books when a driver in Texas was given the fastest speeding ticket ever at 242 miles per hour. I mean, this is the epitome of I have built exactly what I was thinking.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I actually didn't understand when I started out that the cars would be that fast. But when we took the first prototype to the Volvo wind tunnel, we saw that it had under 0.30 in drag, which was super low with these kind of wide tires. So our kind of shape that was created out of emotion and ideas about aerodynamics. Of course, at that time we did not have sophisticated simulation tools and so on. It was just built gut feeling and common, trying to understand how it was supposed to work aerodynamically, but it worked out great. So then when we started to see the power levels we could get out of the CC8S engine, we realized this is going to be a super fast, super powerful car. And yeah, it was enough to break some records for most powerful homologated production engine in the world and the fastest production car in the world on the second model, the CCR. So that was really a good start.
Absolutely, and actually led to so many other amazing projects, which we're going to get to. When you think about product and what you're designing now, does it even beat your own wildest dreams, what you've been able to accomplish in terms of that product development? Does it
in
exceed
many
it?
ways? Yeah, in many ways, yes. But as I just mentioned earlier, I wanted to prove to myself that anything was possible when I started Koenigsegg. So in my mind, everything is still possible, and therefore I guess I'm less surprised when it actually works, having proven that to myself so many times. And we do in the company set up pretty wild dreams that come true a lot of the time. So I wouldn't use the word surprised anymore, but fortunate and excited that the simple philosophy stays true. that it's possible.
Yeah, it's critical. And now you have articles written about the company, such as one with Forbes. There are two people making cars these days that truly bear watching: Elon Musk and Christian von Koenigsegg.
Oh,
what does that mean to you?
Well, it's a great honor to be placed in that in that little group. And of course, Elon is I'm a great fan. I mean, it's amazing what he has achieved, and I've been following quite closely when I didn't know so much about his PayPal days, but I read somewhere, I think it was on the internet, that the guy who sold PayPal started building rockets, and I felt that's a guy with a similar mindset that anything is possible, and maybe that's what I would have done
Yes.
if I sold something for $1 billion. I found that very interesting, and I followed him, and luckily so, because yeah, I managed to buy some shares very close to their IPO, and it was kind of easier way to make money than to build my own cars in the end. So
when you look at where the industry is now, let's talk about electric. You're a forward-looking company when it comes to performance and technology. Could there be the plan to electrify models in the future? And if so, how will that affect the culture surrounding the brand?
Well, I think electrification is super interesting. And of course, given the times we're in, it's an absolute necessity for the environmental aspects. And with the Regera, we really pioneered extreme electrification within our field, or in the hyper mega car scene, by having the world's first 800-volt propelled car in the world, regardless of car type, regardless if it's a hybrid or a pure EV. We were the first. And the technology we've been developing for the Regera and after that for the Gemera and what's coming up is really trying, or we are staying ahead of the curve of what we can see when it comes to weight, size, performance, and function, and mixing and matching this with extreme combustion engine technology with the renewable fuel base, I think is very exciting for our industry. But also, of course, going fully electric is something we will do. But in the short term, as we're also very performance driven, in the short term, a pure electric or only electric hyper mega car is quite a lot heavier if you're going to have any kind of range with this kind of power level, and you don't have as exciting sound, you could argue, perhaps. So we're mixing and matching for the time being, but we're staying. I mean, all of our vehicles are capable of running on renewable fuel, and going kind of bio-renewable fuel together with hybrid and this kind of extreme technology is still, given also the low mileage of the cars, of course, generally speaking, is being very environmentally conscious in the process. But I find as much pleasure and excitement in creating these electrical propulsion systems as combustion engines. But I still do think there's a lot that can be done with combustion engines for purposes where electrification is not fully yet ready for some time, for marine and aerospace applications where you need very long range and where you can run on renewables in combination with electrification, and then for hyper mega cars, which has if you want to stay on a very exciting performance level, you have to watch out for weight. So it's still very interesting there.
So you think that the culture around the brand would follow the brand, even if all models have the electrification option?
Well, that has to be seen. But right now, of course, there is a huge interest in combustion engine hyper mega cars. But there's so much more that can be done with electrification that hasn't been done yet. So I'm confident we can muster up the same level of excitement when we do it our way.
Yeah, I can only imagine what that looks like. Let's talk technology. What's the next biggest advancement or feature that you would like to achieve? The Regera had a single gear a few years ago, and now the new ultimate power on demand on the Jesko. What's coming in terms of groundbreaking innovation?
Yeah, so I think the Regera and the Jesko's LST, the light speed transmission, are two very different and two very exciting technologies that shows the breadth of what we can do. So with the Regera, we really showcased the most extreme hybrid powertrain on earth for a car, I would say. And with the LST U-Pod transmission, we have kind of reinvented the transmission for a combustion engine by shrinking it, making it lighter, much faster to shift, and the ability to jump from any gear to any gear. And also it removes the flywheel and clutch from the engine, which means you have a much faster revving engine than otherwise. So it really takes that excitement up to the next level. But what we're seeing for the future, as well as with these different technologies, we can mix and match the knowledge and the components that we have created into completely new solutions that we would not have thought about otherwise. So they are like stepping stones for new products that we're exploring, which are very, very excited. So yeah.
I mentioned the culture issue earlier. What are your thoughts on that cult following that the brand has created within the industry? I mean, I was there at Pebble Beach. I saw it firsthand, and in Monterey and on Broadway, it's crazy.
Yeah, I think so. One thing is, of course, the cars, and we try to make the most exciting cars that it's possible to produce or create. But I do think a lot of the fans resonate with this this kind of fulfilling my dream and being allowed to do these amazing things, and staying kind of true to the mission, and really sharing this with anyone who's interested. I think the most important part of what I'm doing and what we do here at Koenigsegg is probably showing the world that you can really do anything you put your mind to. And we keep on getting a lot of feedback and emails and letters from the public where they say, I saw what you did and what you guys are doing, and it made me take the steps to create my company, fulfill this dream. And I just want to thank you guys for kind of leading the way and showing that it's possible. And I think it's kind of the combination of that and the extreme nature of the cars and so on, and that we're quite accessible, generally speaking, as a company to anyone who's interested, resonates with passionate people in general. So
a lot of focus on speed. Will you attempt to retake the production speed record from Bugatti sometime soon?
Well, that's an interesting question. So in our mind, they didn't really take it from us because the Bugatti speed run they did like a year or two ago, it was one prototype car in one direction, so not the production car in two directions. So very, very, very impressive. extreme speed, but not necessarily a production car speed record. However, the Jesko Absolute is, as far as we can judge, even faster than that, and that is a production car, and it would be very exciting to showcase its ultimate capability in the near future.
Yeah, we can't wait. We can't wait, Christian. What drives you to want to continue to smash those records and create these mind-blowing cars?
Well, I would put it like this: it's a testament to all the efforts going in by the team, all the efforts to create the car, and to really show the world and ourselves that what we have created stands out compared to anything out there. And if it is possible, we kind of owe it to ourselves and everyone else to show what it is capable of. Also for the customers, of course, who buy it. So we push really hard to stay ahead of the curve, and that's kind of the proof of the pudding in a way. So
related and back to the millennial question or the Gen Z question, when we have so many young folks interested in your vehicles, it kind of blows up the notion that young people aren't interested in cars, right?
Well, exactly. And I think it boils down a lot to, I would say, incredibly well executed car video games and the YouTube car culture. So I have a 15-year-old son. I mean, he basically grew up here in the company as a kid, and to him, extreme cars was everyday stuff in a way, and he didn't show that big of an interest. But then he kind of got into his own car culture thing with JDM cars and things like that, and he knows details about cars from when I was a kid that I actually don't even know, and it dug deep into that, and a lot of his friends does the same thing. But I think it comes from this kind of YouTube video car game culture, which have absorbed these earlier cool cars as well, and they blend them and mix them knowledge-wise with the new cars. So there is this, at least this clique of youngsters who are more car nut than I've ever seen before, and how widespread that is, I don't really know, but I think it's fairly widespread. So there is for sure this interest, and I think what happened to horses 150 years ago or so, when they were replaced by cars. Someone told me there are more horses today than when we used them as well for transportation, and just to have fun with them and compete with them or whatever we do with them. And maybe the same thing will happen to at least sports cars when everything is kind of electrified or autonomized or whatever, that people still want to enjoy the rush of driving on racetracks or the Nürburgring or other places, or maybe on the public if they're allowed. And there will be a huge culture and following around that. That's what I believe, at least, will happen, and seeing what happened in history. So
maybe it's a statement as much about technology than a statement about affluence when it comes to these vehicles.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. When we look at other brands, we mentioned Tesla momentarily. Who do you admire?
I mean, in our industry, most of them are long gone, I guess. But Enzo, Ferrari, Ferdinand, Porsche. I mean, these are all legends creating incredible brands and incredible cars. Yeah, I think it's, when it comes to normal cars, I don't really have any people that I really followed so much, or I think, what Ford did was pretty amazing, of course. Henry
Yes,
Ford.
of course.
But I think as a kid, I didn't really care so much about who did these cars. I more just looked at the cars themselves. So it wasn't, I didn't really have a role model apart from this bicycle repairman.
Right, exactly.
But he was a cartoon.
How about the brands that are achieving great things?
Yeah, so in our industry, I think, there is, if you look at Pagani, relatively small, hard-hitting, extreme hyper mega car company that also came about in the similar time period as Koenigsegg did, and very coincidental that these two companies kind of came about at similar time, not knowing about each other, working quietly, one in the north and one in the south, and hitting the scene at a similar time, and that both would shine and survive and flourish is quite unbelievable. But that's what happened. So that is very cool. Yeah, what else? I mean, most other brands in this industry is of course so much older, so it's a little bit harder to relate to these kind of startup situations.
Do you learn from what Pagani's doing? Do you watch them super closely, imitate, iterate?
I don't know, not really. I would say I would say anyone who's been in a Koenigsegg or Pagani would say they're completely different, and we have very different philosophies on how to create the car, as far as I can see. But I do admire and appreciate very much what they're doing. It's a completely different mindset, but the similarities are, I guess, very low volume, hand built, very expensive.
That's what I mean.
By the founder, you know, it's there are similarities, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. There's a ghost logo that's on the cars that comes from the Swedish Air Force. Not a lot of people know about that. You've talked about it a little bit in the Apex movie. Tell our listeners what the ghost logo is all about.
Yeah, so we took over an old military fighter jet base in 2003, and the Swedish government had decided to shut it down, and we were kind of moving in while they were pulling out the planes, and the pilots were here, and the staff cleaning up. So yeah, shutting it down basically, and they came to us and said, listen, we had this ghost on our planes for like 70 years or something. They had been here forever. And we were called the ghosts because in the early days, we were flying, hiding over the clouds before radars and stuff like that. So people could hear us, but they couldn't see us. So we were called the ghosts. And they had this ghost on their airplane. And they said, now that we're shutting down the squadron, it would be an honor for us if you could continue to carry this symbol on your vehicles that you produce here, where we used to have our base, and let the legacy continue. And they had the slogan for the squadron was "The show must go on," and then we felt, okay, the show goes on. Then if we put this ghost on the cars, and this has turned out to be a pretty big thing. So all the cars we produce here, they have the ghost on them, and our yearly tours we have in Europe and in the US and so on, we call the Ghost Squadron tours. So and we have this symbol. We're giving it out to our car owners and employees here working. They get a little pin with a silver or golden ghost on it, so they can wear on their lapel. And when they walk car shows and so on, you can see that they're either owning a Koenigsegg or working for Koenigsegg and participating in the Ghost Squadron tour. And also our fans kind of call themselves part of the Ghost Squadron. So it's become a thing, which is pretty cool.
Well, you have such a nod to history. Even your iconic badge is based on the family's coat of arms, dates back to the 12th century. Right. Rich history, strong identity. That's what you're known for.
Yeah. So I remember when I started out, I wasn't even sure if I was going to call the company Koenigsegg because it's such a complicated name. But then I realized that Häagen-Dazs, the ice cream maker, they made up that complicated name to be different. So I thought if you make up something as complicated as that, then I guess I can call it Koenigsegg. And that was, of course, the tradition in the car industry to name it after your last name. But then, as the family had this crest, and I got a logo. And in the first few years, we didn't have any history. So then I felt at least the logo is old, so we have some history.
What markets excite you as you look outward? I know you've talked about the Asian market being very prominent. What other areas of growth could there be?
Yeah, so I would put it like this. Right now, it's very evenly spread around the world, the customer base. So let's say the country that has the most Koenigsegg for one country is the US, but of course it's basically a continent. And the US together with Canada and Mexico is basically the same volumes as Europe. and Europe is about the same volumes as Asia and the Middle East together. So it's very, very evenly spread, which is great because we really want all different cultures and places to enjoy our cars and for the fans to see them and so on. And I mean, the world is still a big place for us. So this year we're producing, I guess, around 30 cars. So it's not going to be many ending up in one spot. At the same time, we're then expanding this quite a lot over the coming years into, well into the hundreds to get with this 4-seater Gemera we're building and some other cars coming up as well. So.
Yeah, how much opportunity could the Gemera provide you? Do you figure from a volume standpoint?
So we're looking at producing well over 100 per year, and it is a more kind of daily driving platform, but it's still very, very extreme. It's a 4-seater, and it's really the fundamentals for many products going forward, 4 and 2-seaters. So it enables us to go up a little bit in volume, and of course, going from 30 to hundreds of cars sounds like a very big step, but putting that into context of, I guess, Ferrari and Lamborghini building close to 10,000s of cars per year, or McLaren in the 3, 4, 5,000s, something like that, and the same with Aston Martin. It's still extremely low volume, and we don't see us going much higher than that in the next couple of years. But for us, it's of course a big step. But it really enables us to have a little bit more of an impact in the market and really supply the demand that's out there for what we do. We have already established 40 dealers around the world, and that is way too many for 30 cars per year, clearly. But of course, these dealers have the future in mind and orders in the pipeline connected to our expansion. So,
just in the final few minutes we have left, Christian, define the culture of Koenigsegg for me. How would you define it?
I would say it's a can-do mentality, and also kind of people willing to step out of the comfort zone that are working here, challenge themselves, jump into the deep end, learning how to swim, and get out on the other side. So it is, some people say here that working 1 year for Koenigsegg is like working 5 years for another company, of all the stuff you do and the responsibility you have to take. And I think it's a very forming experience being here. And it's about pushing boundaries really, and seeing beyond, around the next corner kind of thing.
Around the next corner for you is a birthday that ends in a 0, a very important one. So what would you like your next 10 years to look like if we are reflecting back on your next big birthday?
Yeah, so
a decade down the road. What does
exactly.
that look like for you? How would you define your success?
Well, I think for me, it's, when it comes to Koenigsegg, it's about making sure the company thrives and stays viable and can roll with the times, making sure we can have a positive impact in our marketplace, but also in people's lives and on the environment. To me, it's important that what we develop here is not only let's say fun toys for the wealthy, but it also has a bigger meaning when it comes to artistry, technology, and how this can send rings on the water and to inspire other people to doing exciting things. So as long as we can do that, I would consider that a success. Then how big we will grow, or exactly what our products will look like, that of course depends on a lot of factors that are not only in our own should I say something we cannot entirely control, but we're used to kind of rolling with the times, rolling with the punches, and moving forward. So do
you want to launch a rocket one day?
That would be very exciting, but it's not in the pipeline in the near future. However, I would say some of the technologies that we're working on might have a place in that kind of application. For example, the free valve technology that we have developed for our Gemera engine and so on, you can use that for some type of kind of rocket propulsion engines and stuff like that. So, and I would also say the engine technology we are working on for the Jumeirah might end up in aerospace and these kind of things, but it's not in the pipeline to build our own rockets at this moment in time.
Well, they are rockets on the road, and whether they take off and go into space, it doesn't really matter. Christian, thank you so much for being on Cars and Culture. It's been an absolute thrill to talk to you.
Great talking to you as well, Jason. Thanks.
The automobile is one of the most important inventions that revolutionized the modern world. In America, the rich history of car culture runs deep as technology continues to shape the future of the industry. Jason Stein,
former publisher of Automotive News,
is here to share the stories of people passionate about cars, from industry leaders and innovators to car-obsessed celebrities. Buckle up as Jason takes you inside the boardroom, onto the track, and around the bend on Cars and Culture on SiriusXM Business Radio.